Hi, I'm Alicia from the Melanin Initiative podcast. Our mission is twofold. One, to simplify complex health information so you feel empowered to ask questions, educated on how to manage your health, and confident to navigate the healthcare system. And two, to elevate the expertise of nurses, spotlight the diverse career opportunities within the healthcare industry, and inform our peers how to leverage their expertise as clinicians and entrepreneurs. In less than 2 years, we've grown to over 50,000 views and 1,000 downloads, with an international audience spanning the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, and more. Our engaged listeners are professionals, entrepreneurs aged 25 to 44 who value authentic, impactful content. Want to connect with this dynamic audience? Advertise with us. Send in your 1-minute video ad and let's amplify your brand. Email tmi.melanin@gmail.com for rates and details. Let's work together.
In healthcare, there is often too much information and not enough time. Here at the Melanin Initiative, we avoid TMI by breaking things down into language you can understand. We create a safe space for you to ask your questions and share our nursing perspective without taking up too much of your time. Today, we're honored to be joined by Tenise Hordge, the founder of Mother's Magical Milk. Love that name. We're going to talk all about breastfeeding and lactation. We're going to learn about her journey, the current state of lactation when it comes to Black and Brown communities, the benefits and barriers to both lactation and breastfeeding, the services she offers, and what it's like to be one of her clients. We're going to learn about she offers curriculum for daycare centers and healthcare providers, so we'll learn about the details of that and what to expect from her in the next 12 months. If you're new here, welcome to the Melanin Initiative. I'm Dr. Kimberly Madison, a doctorally prepared nurse practitioner and one of your co-hosts here at the Melanin Initiative, along with Alicia and Geraldine, who send their love in their absence. We are a health literacy podcast. When we say health literacy, we're talking about your ability to obtain information, to understand that information, and then to use it to manage your health and advocate for others. By watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast app, it's our hope that you'll be empowered to ask questions, educated on how you can manage your health at home, and confident to navigate the healthcare system. If you haven't already, we invite you to subscribe, hit the thumbs up, do the stars, the follows, hit the bell so that you can be notified when we release a new episode. It also lets the algorithm know that this show is important so that when people like you put in questions like these topics, this will be at the top of those results. Remember, this show is for educational purposes only. The opinions expressed here are opinions alone. They're not a representation of any of our affiliations. If you are experiencing a medical emergency, you should seek medical guidance by your healthcare provider. If you think you might be having a physical emergency, you should call 911. And if you or someone you might know is having a mental health emergency, you should call 988. Tenise, welcome to the Melanin Initiative.
Thank you, Dr. Kimberly. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited. We have been, I don't know what number episode this is, but we have dedicated quite a few shows to that whole space of like maternal health. And we just want to keep doing that, right? Because the outcomes, as we'll get into when it comes to our community, are quite poor considering how rich our country is. And one thing we like to do in addition to promoting health literacy is, we're all healthcare providers and professionals. And so we like to let people know that in addition to being a nurse and a doctor, there is a million other ways that you can provide care to people. And we just like to let people know that those options are available. So before we get into your services, tell us about where you're from and where you live now.
Yes. So I grew up in Colorado. However, I lived all over. I lived in Arizona for 10 years. I've lived in Boise, Idaho, New Jersey, Switzerland, and I have been in Texas for about 14 years now. But I don't have a drawl.
Oh. And was that the military?
It wasn't. I've had a really amazing experience. I'm an engineer by trade, and so I spent the majority of my adult life in manufacturing and program management roles that allowed me to travel the globe on somebody else's dime. And it really wasn't until I became a mother that I realized how unfulfilled I was, even though I was very successful in those roles. And then the pandemic came, which added a little bit more pressure about being true to myself and my authenticity, and deciding and choosing to live life on purpose and follow my entrepreneurial passion, which is how I got into lactation.
Beautiful. So before we jump in, and who do you call your family?
So I am married. I have two children, and then I have a host of family. I'm actually visiting family now in Arizona. So my husband is from Arizona, but my mother, my grandmother, my sister, and my aunt all live here.
Oh, okay. What part of Arizona?
Phoenix.
Oh, I fell in love with Arizona last year on a contract. And I tell people all the time that my body's here on the East Coast, but my soul is still there in the mountains amongst the cacti and the rocks. And
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I lived here for 10 years. I went to undergrad and graduate school here. But it's been 14 or so years since I've lived here.
I love it. Colorado too, the springs. Oh, I just fell in love with that part of the country. But I think because you just get used to what's familiar, So when you see something new, like you just can fall in love with it, because people over there, like I met one guy, he grew up in Arizona and he couldn't wait to live in Alaska and have seasons. And I was like, that's overrated.
I get that a lot. And that's one of the reasons what I really enjoy about Texas is that I have 4 seasons. Now I can totally do without the tornado warnings and sirens, but I do like the 4 seasons, which I didn't get from Phoenix. Yeah.
And what part of Texas?
I am literally between Dallas and Fort Worth, which the recent studies show that both Dallas and Fort Worth were 2 of the 15 most populated cities in the United States. So if you can imagine traffic and people and all the things, we are full. We're not accepting any more applicants, so no one else moved there.
I hear you. So we're in the DMV. We know all about traffic, which is one of the reasons I love other parts of the country a lot.
Exactly. And we don't have great public transportation, at least on the East Coast. You can take the metro or something. That's not really an option for us.
That's a very good point. Because actually I lived in Boston, and so I lived in Memphis. So I had a little travel, not as much as you. But when I lived in Memphis, it snowed like this much, right? Everything shut down, even the bank. I couldn't believe the bank. But when I went to Boston, it was like this, and everything still ran. That transportation, it's underappreciated until you don't
that
have
part.
It. All right, so let's hear about your journey when it comes to the topics of breastfeeding and lactation.
Yes. So I think the spark for me that kind of lit the fire for breastfeeding and lactation was having my first child. She came early. She came at 31 weeks gestation. She spent 6 weeks in the NICU, and we had phenomenal support. The NICU nurses where I delivered her were amazing. The NICU doctors, not so much, but the nurses were amazing. And so I recall signing a waiver after I had her, basically stating if I couldn't produce enough breast milk, they were going to give her donor milk. Well, I had never heard of donor milk. I didn't know that was a thing, but I was like, it must be really important. So let me go ahead and sign this. And I had wanted to breastfeed, didn't know what that would look like with the preemie. I expressed this to what I now know was the IBCLC, or the International Board Certified Lactation Consultant, supporting the NICU. And she's like, well, then that's what we're going to do. And we worked towards that goal. And I remember this lady, she was older, all white hair. Her name was Mary. That's all I remember. And it was also her second career. She had did something else previously. I'm not sure what for her made her make that switch. And then she chose to become an IBCLC and work with NICU babies. I'm forever grateful for her and the rest of the staff. And that was the kind of the spark for me. I was like, oh, this breast milk is it's really amazing stuff. Fast forward, and we went on to have a great breastfeeding experience. My daughter and I, we breastfed for 14 months. And then my son came about 2 years later, and we breastfed for a little over 2 years. And I was like, listen, I'm done. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to move on. But it was during that time that I developed my love for human milk and the benefits of human milk, and really being in a position that I can educate and help other women who looked like me, who didn't have the support and the help that I had, achieve their breastfeeding goals. Because while I had a great experience, I was the exception and not the rule.
Mm. Well, shout out to Mary.
Yes.
And second chapters, right? Second career folks, right? It's never too late to make a big difference. And we love that you had such exceptional experience with those nurses in the NICU. Everyone has a calling on their life when they choose healthcare, and those specialties are there for the people whose calling is right up their alley.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So let's talk about the state of lactation when it comes to Black and Brown communities. What have you found?
There is such a lack of education and then a lack of support. So, historically, Black and Brown women have had the lowest initiation and duration rates for a host of reasons, right? So, from the Black community, we have a cultural overcoming that we need to overcome from slave days. There's also a rich history of medical mistrust. If you look at the Navajo sterilization, if we look at Tuskegee, we can go on and on, even in the Japanese camps. But there is a host of medical mistrust that keeps primarily minorities, Black and Brown women, from seeking help when their nipples are bleeding, when they are engorged, when they're not sure if their baby is getting enough. So it is easier on paper to just give formula. Formula companies market differently to Black and Brown families than they do otherwise. So that's also playing against us. And there's a lack of education that details the benefits and the management to the baby, to the infant, and to the mom. So for the mom, the longer she breastfeeds, she has greater protection against hypertension, diabetes, and certain cancers. That is very important because Black and Brown women lead this country in hypertension-related deaths and diseases. 56% of Black women and 43% of Hispanic women have hypertension. That's literally heartbreaking. If we were having these conversations early in life about, how breastfeeding can offset your risks of getting hypertension, and supporting them as they go through the journey, it would make a world of difference. Also, furthermore, there's not enough lactation consultants that look like the communities that they support. If you were to Google right now, lactation consultants, you're not going to see someone who looks like me. You will see a cartoon of a ethnic ambiguous person that you may or may not assume is a lactation consultant or the lactation nurse. But when you Google lactation consultant, people don't look like you and I. And that's an issue because if I already have a medical mistrust, if I already have a historical culture, maybe I didn't see my mother or my grandmother or my auntie breastfeed, and my nipples are bitten up, I might not trust someone who doesn't look like me to share such an intimate issue that I'm having.
Yeah, I love that you brought the history amongst so many of the different ethnicities, right? And you talked about high blood pressure. So that's the motivation for this show. A gentleman I was taking care of was going on dialysis because he had stopped taking his blood pressure medication and he didn't even know what blood pressure was. So we know he had that for decades before he got to that point. And to think you went through decades without even knowing what you had and how you got to this point. And that was just an inspiration to start the show. And so I love that you brought it up because it comes into the cardiac conversation and people don't realize how it threads through everything. Everything. Does. Yeah. And it's in our control, right? And so I think part of the reason people don't understand what it is because of the word hypertension. So I'm on a mission to encourage us to use the word high blood pressure because I think that will spark more questions. Well, what is high? Because people automatically assume they know hyper and that that's a feeling. And so since I don't have a feeling, I don't have a problem and I don't need to get it addressed. So thank you.
So true. Yeah, it's called the silent killer.
Exactly. But those are words, and people don't I'm trying to make these connections. And so I love that you brought up some additional benefits because I think now there is a trend for people they're really curious about the origin of where things come from and what's in their kitchen and in their control that they can use to manage that as opposed to the medications and the pills.
Very true. Very true.
I think social media has a lot to do with that because people are sharing their journeys like you are right now and they relate to you. You look like them, you sound like them, you're from where they're from, you mention things they grew up with. Now they want that you're talking their language. You're not wearing a white coat in a cold clinic, talking big words and scary diagnoses. And so I'm more inclined to listen to you. And I might even ask you questions and contact you before I make an appointment with a provider because I relate to you.
And that's exactly why I started Mother's Magical Milk.
Beautiful segue. Yeah. But we have talked quite a bit. Can we just explain what lactation and breastfeeding are?
Yes. So first of all, there's a big component about normalizing brown breasts. So we sexualize brown breasts in this, or breasts in general in this country. And when we see a brown breast, we're like, oh my gosh, you should put this away. And what are we doing? Mm-hmm. Well, this is how we feed our children. So if we talk about human lactation, if we just take a step back of just as humans. So when horses have their babies, they're called foals. Foals start walking right away. Humans don't do that. We need to be held. We need to be carried. We need to be close to the people that take care of us. Our milk is designed to be easily digestible so that it's breaking down. Baby is waking up. Mom is having a biological reaction saying it's time to eat. This is what we want. We don't want our baby sleeping through long periods of time. We don't want to encourage SIDS. We don't want necessarily something that's sitting on that baby's stomach that is difficult for that baby to digest. So human milk is the perfect nutrition for a growing human infant. So the rapid growth from 0 months to 6 months of the brain needs to be fueled. And that's where our human food comes in, right? And so there is the biological component. The baby's saliva, when it's latched to mama's breast, enters in through the Montgomery glands. There's signals that go up to the brain. It changes the composition of the milk, and then the milk flows out. Human milk changes throughout the day. It changes throughout the journey. Human milk has more melatonin at night to help the baby sleep. It's just amazing biology behind it all, but we don't know the benefits. Therefore, we don't seek help when it comes to the management, and we choose not to do it. And it's hurting us, literally killing us later in life.
I love that you have this prop. And so there's a big, I don't know if I want to call it big, but there's a lack of diversity when it comes to medicine, right? And so we say that we're talking about the people who look like us. You just said that, but there's also these images. So they're the things that you actually do the training on. So like CPR mannequins, this breast, for example, textbook images. And so again, like I said, we like to bring awareness to other ways people can bring diversity to medicine, because it starts with the education, not just the person, but what are you training on? What do the pictures look like when you open that textbook?
Yes.
And so I've been fortunate this summer to really meet a lot of people. So there's cosmetic chemistry, right? And this lady, Eunice Cofield Bang, she helps dermatologists create skincare products from a cosmetologist perspective, right? I mean, from a chemist perspective. And that's all. She had a professor who taught them how to make perms. Like that one little action inspired her to want to create her own product. So then she had cards of the skin anatomy, and it dawned on me, I've never seen brown skin in a textbook. So then she says, well, I worked with a medical illustrator. Medical illustrators can create these images. So now when we look at the skin, so if you're coming to me as a Black and brown person, and I'm supposed to look at your body and make an assessment, and everything in the book was red, your skin doesn't turn red, you're going to get misdiagnosed, undiagnosed, and mistreated, right? And not necessarily because I was neglectful, I just didn't have the proper access to education like your prop there. And
Yes.
we just really don't think about. So you are in entrepreneurship. So in addition to being, care providers, you can be in the manufacturing business. You can create these products because entities are lacking. I had someone from Hopkins looking for models to teach nurses how to assess for wounds, and even they didn't have anything.
Yes. And it's funny you say that, because I think about 2 years ago, there was uproar about the young Black gentleman who created a baby in utero, an embryo in utero, and it was Black. And so people were like, well, I have never seen a Black baby born. And all the Black people were like, hello, all of our children are born Black. Like, what are you talking about? And it was an uproar. And he did a perfect diagram. I mean, it was amazing. Also, shout out to Dr. Nikisha Killings, who has the melanated mammary atlas that shows brown and Black breasts that have certain things like mastitis, or what cracked nipples looks like, or what a red tint on a Black breast might look like, because we don't have these images.
Ooh, that's so good. I'm putting that down to make sure we put that in our description box.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, so those are other ways that we can bring diversity to medicine, is through the training, right? And people are entering this field every single day. You just spent the whole day in training yourself. That continuing education goes on. And so those are other ways people of color, or you don't have to be of color, you just have to be intentional about creating a diverse tone of images and actual products that we're doing our training on.
Yes, absolutely. And then I will also say that there is some onus on the actual individual. I see being aware of our body parts. I mean, it's very taboo to look at our own breasts, and there'll be, a mother in the office, and I'm like, is this your normal coloring? Is your areola normally this red? And they're like, well, I don't know. because I don't look at my own breast. I'm not sure. So I think the awareness, twofold. So for healthcare providers to be familiar with what certain skin inflictions look like on darker skin tone, but also as us as individuals to take note of our body and what is normal, what's abnormal, so that when we have a concern, we can say, hey, it's really red right here, or it's kind of a bruised tint. I'm not sure what's going on.
Beautiful. Yeah, you're just bringing up so many ways that we can really increase awareness and education so that people can take care of themselves. Because even though we talked about the state of lactation and breastfeeding, and even just maternal health in general when it comes to Black and Brown communities, in healthcare, really only 20% of what we do actually impacts the outcome. The whole 80% happens outside of these walls.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's striking.
And we spend so much money on the 20%, But like I mentioned earlier, I think that's shifting where now the consumer is kind of requesting, even demanding that we do spend more attention over there. And we see that shift happening in research and in practice. So we touched a little bit, you started to talk a little bit on the benefits and barriers when it comes to lactation and breastfeeding. Let's just get into that a little bit more.
Yes. So I talked about cultural aspects, that medical mistrust, access to care, right? So while the Affordable Care Act does mandate lactation care, insurance companies are very creative in getting around actually reimbursing for medical care. So individuals who work for the government and have federal plans, federal plans have been grandfathered and don't actually support lactation care. Aetna, which is a big provider in my area, they are discontinuing a code that is used for lactation services as of September 1st. So there's individuals who have insurance, right, but don't have lactation care as advertised to them. And that's a really big problem because it's not just about feeding baby. Yes, feeding the baby is vitally important, but we already talked about the benefits long-term. So like I told you, I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The top 3 hospital admissions in Dallas County, the public hospital, are hypertension, diabetes, and certain cancers. So if we really want to affect the long-term health outcomes of our population, we should be supporting lactation care, and we just don't. So that's a barrier to getting help and support. And then I talked on a little bit briefly lactation constant or culturally competent lactation care providers that look like the individuals that they serve. Please Google lactation consultant images after this call. They don't look like me and you. So if you think about needing to get care and not enough people that look like you are supporting you. So an international board certified lactation consultant is considered the gold standard for lactation care based off of the education and the clinical hours that we needed to do to be able to sit for our exam. In the US, we are also the only lactation professionals that can bill for insurance companies. Texas is a very big state. There are only 1,200 and some number international board certified lactation consultants statewide. So even if every person who had a baby in the state of Texas wanted to get care, there's not enough IBCLCs to support them. So there is definitely a lack of communication, as well as people going into the field or knowing that it's even a field that exists. I often get, oh, that's a job. It is a job. Yes. And it has a very good benefit to be able to support these families in the way that they need support.
And I love that you're coming from an engineering background, right? Because everyone might assume automatically that they have to be a nurse to do this. And so that's why I really love being able to bring your story forward for multiple reasons. Before we get more into the access to care barriers and benefits, what are those abbreviations after your name?
Okay, so I have an MBA, a master's in business administration. My bachelor's is in industrial engineering, and then international board certified lactation consultant. And then as we spoke, I think in early June, I am currently working on my doctoral degree in healthcare administration, and I will finish next May. So there's a lot going on right now.
Yeah, and we do kind of promote education. I mean, whether people choose to go all the way to graduate or not, that's fine. But we do have a few people on the show who we're following their journey as grad students. And so we love to hear about your research. Do you have a title or a topic?
So really in the beginning stages, but I really want to be able to associate birth outcomes and consequential breastfeeding outcomes for infants born on U.S. holidays. So Christmas, Thanksgiving, as we know, sometimes we will induce lactation, or excuse me, not lactation, induce labor, and then slow labor down, and then induce it back up, and then we have a C-section, or we just schedule a C-section because you're due around the 24th of December. I have Christmas plans, whatever it may be. But when we interfere with a natural kind of cadence of how birth is supposed to happen, there's consequences. So I'm super curious about diving into what that looks like from a birth aspect, and then also breastfeeding outcomes.
Yeah, we love that. Yeah, if you ever want to come back when you're done with your research and after you've passed your dissertation, you're welcome to share what you've learned and, give advice to the next student.
Definitely.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned language. And so there's actually just today, there's another podcast called the PA Playbook, and they've released an episode called Familiar Faces in Care, and the importance of minority representation in medicine. And so they delved into the history of minorities in medicine, women in medicine. Did you know the first PA was a Black woman? I didn't know that.
I didn't know that, but I love that.
And so the guest on there is a lady by the name of Paola Gonzalez. She is the recent past president of PAs for Latino Health, and she's a new director at large at the American Academy of Physician Assistants. She's actually located in Houston. And a big part of her platform, no matter where she is talking about diversity in language. And bringing attention to that, always asking, who is in your clinical trials? Are you providing these forms in other languages for people? Because that is also a huge barrier. And she gave several examples of stories where it was just because of the language barrier that people didn't understand what was going on, or they didn't trust the person giving them their advice, and why they refused care that was actually beneficial, And so I think that's also important to remember, that language, we can't take for granted that everybody speaks the same language, hence the health literacy.
Very true. And even when speaking to, families from a lactation perspective, so the early postpartum period is an extremely vulnerable time. These families aren't sleeping. The mom might be experiencing some pain herself. She's healing. She maybe had a C-section or a 4th degree tear or what have you. So getting in front of them and being very technical about that's not beneficial to anybody. Excuse me. So really being able to communicate in a way that is helpful and beneficial to the family in front of you to help them along their way is something that I think is not well practiced. Yeah. There's an opportunity for improvement.
And I love that you brought the family, because so did Paula, especially when it comes to the Latino community. And there's some other ethnicities where that's super important, where you actually have to get the buy-in from the family before you can move forward at all with the patient.
Yeah, and I see somewhat of that, but I also want to give a shout out to the dads and partners, in my practice at least. I would say 95% of the families that I see, it's both parents are there. And dads are supportive, partners are supportive. They're like, see, I told you, see, you're doing everything right. And, you are beautiful. And we need this. We were never meant to birth and lactate and raise children by ourselves. We weren't designed to do that. And we need this community, which we don't have. And I think for me specifically, spending so long in corporate America, I didn't have that community. I absolutely had really great friends that we are still in contact with today, but I can't say that I had community. One of the things that I want to build within my practice is community. I've been invited to children's birthday parties. The best recommendation is for a repeat customer, right? To come back, we're pregnant again. And I love that, being able to be that connector and be that community resource, because we need that. We need that to be successful. We need that just to thrive, to be human.
Beautiful. So let's talk about your practice. Tell us the journey to becoming an entrepreneur and where you came up with the name Mother's Magical Milk.
So the journey to become an entrepreneur. So I started this while I was working my career 9 to 5. I had disposable income. I had some time. I also took a leave of absence to work on my LLC, getting that started up. I purchased several lactation textbooks to be prepared to get my lactation training. I think I purchased my website domain, getting all the things so that when I left corporate America, I could start the next day in my new field. So the name, I wanted something that really spoke to motherhood.
Mhm.
And then the benefits of human milk. So I'm an engineer. I am literally fascinated by the biology behind all the things that human milk does. I'm fascinated. I am fascinated that a mother will wake up before her baby starts crying to feed, that somebody who is in Target hears someone else's baby crying and may express or leak milk. I find that all fascinating. So I wanted to talk about the magical properties of milk. And my sister-in-law actually came up with a list of names to help me brainstorm, and we settled on Mother's Magical Milk.
It's beautiful. I love it. So curious, are you still working for corporate America?
I am not. So I think I launched my LLC in November of 2020, and I quit my corporate role in May of 2021.
Wow, that's a quick turnaround.
Yeah. Well, I'm a planner, so I put all got our budget together and, put some things in place so that it would be an easy kind of walk away.
That's wonderful. And so what services do you offer?
Yes. So I see families prenatally, but the majority of the time is after the baby arrives. So whether it's soon after the baby arrives, there's issues going on, whether it's weight gain, sore nipples, sore breasts, insufficient supply, oversupply, returning back to work, selecting a pump. My pump is not working, introducing solids. That's the most majority of my practice. I've kind of pivoted into more of an educational role. So we talked a little bit about I'll be providing education for daycare providers, because the way that you feed a baby who primarily is fed at the breast or with breast milk is different than a formula feeding baby, as well as the class that I'm teaching right now. So I had day one of a certified lactation educator course, and we'll continue on to the rest of the week to make and build more competent lactation educators and professionals in the world, because there's not enough of us.
Yeah, certainly. You're spilling out a lot of really helpful, because there's just so many people, whether they're students or they're already working and they're just trying to find something that's fulfilling. You're really giving a lot of avenues for people. So yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your passion is palpable. Like, you're so excited about it. Yeah, it's like, I
So
want
excited.
to learn. Yeah, that's what you want, especially when it's such
Yes.
that time in the postpartum, the pregnancy journey is just a lot.
It is. It's heavy.
It's a lot, right? There's no manual. And so you're just trying to figure it out the best you can. And to have support like you, who's really passionate, really educated, that helps a lot.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So how does someone find you? From the website, social media? Do you go out into the community and knock on doors?
Almost all of the above. So I am online. So www.mothersmagicalmilk altogether. You can book an appointment there. You can do that by insurance company. So you have Aetna, United Healthcare. I'm just getting ready to sign a contract with Cigna. So really trying to cover all the major healthcare providers, even self-pay. Also on there, I have links to my training. So I am currently conducting a certified lactation educator training as we speak. My next one will be offered in October. So there's information on there. We are on social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I try to share the funny parts of motherhood, because it's if you don't laugh, you'll cry. Also really educational on, the benefits, the management. I talk a lot about my personal stories. I have a 5 and a 7-year-old. They keep me spinning. And if I don't laugh, I will cry. So my content is informative, but really relates to motherhood. So that's all the ways that you can find me.
Oh, that's wonderful. And everything is virtual, or you see some people in person?
The majority of the folks that I see are in person. I do have a brick and mortar office, but 2020 really taught us that the email, the meeting could be an email. So I am branching out and doing more virtuals, especially allowing me to travel. So I'm in Phoenix now. I have my breast model, I have my doll, and some other things that I had 3 clients on Tuesday remotely. So being able to get a wider audience base means that I am able to support more families.
And what does that relationship look like? So I booked my appointment. Now we're meeting either in person or virtually. What's that like?
Yes. So right after you book, I ask for you to complete some forms. It talks through kind of what your concerns are, what labor and delivery look like, if you're still expecting, when baby is due, is it your first child? Did you have success in breastfeeding your second child or your first child? And then when we get together, I tackle your concerns. Typically, if you are in person, we'll weigh the baby. and get a pre-feed weight. I'll do an oral anatomy kind of review on baby's mouth. I'll check for some reflexes, do a newborn exam. I observe mama's breast, especially if she's having any pain in the breast or nipples. And then we get baby feeding. So I'll ask mom to latch baby how she normally does. And then I'll offer any suggestions or advice. Once we get baby feeding without any pain to mom, we go through her intake forms. So we talk about what nighttime feedings look like. We talk about baby's output. Baby has wet diapers and is stooling. Baby's general temperament. Is baby cranky? Is baby kind of chill? We talk about all these things. We talk about mom, if mom is experiencing, any type of health concerns. I get a history from mom. So PCOS, birth control, these things can all make breastfeeding look differently. If mom had gestational diabetes or currently has diabetes or hypertension that was brought on by pregnancy or prior or after, because all of these things are important to know because it can make breastfeeding look differently. So having this discussion, we talk about moms eating and drinking, because while I think the babies that I see are absolutely adorable and I want to snuggle with them, people forget about the mom. People forget about, what the mom might be experiencing, and she's giving her all, literally, to her child. She might not be eating. She might not be drinking. She might not be raising the white flag when she needs a break. And we want to talk about that. So all these things are covered during a lactation visit. Once baby is done eating, I'll weigh baby, see how much baby transferred. And from there, we create a plan together to work on, and then a follow-up.
Wonderful. Do you meet people in the hospital?
Occasionally. So I've had families that I've seen either prenatally or it's their second kid. And they're like, hey, there's 2 hospitals really close to me. And so I've gone into the hospital to meet these families, but not very often. I would say in the last 6 months, probably 4 or 5 of those.
Oh, okay. And can people request your virtual services no matter where they live?
Yes.
Okay. And then, there was something else I was going to say. This happens every episode.
That's okay.
Oh man, it was a good one. It will come back.
Okay.
I hope. And what's that long-term relate? Oh, I know what it was. Yeah. Can people, because you talked about how important people forget about mom. Can people, I don't know, like request your service, or do you have like a gift card so people can give that as like a gift?
I do. Yes. And not only can people get a gift card for a prenatal assessment, I also frequently give those away. So I'm very active in the community health fairs. I've been invited to speak, and we'll give these freely out because that education is such a vital and important piece. So it's starting that relationship building. It allows them to ask all the questions, know about all the resources. And if things go great, and it's individual. So I do classes, but a prenatal assessment is individual. We just talk about you and your concerns versus a class full of people. Oftentimes they don't have any questions. They're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this. I feel armed with all this information and I'm ready. And then oftentimes they're like, okay, baby's arrived. What am I doing?
Mm-hmm. Do you have books
that I've authored?
Yeah.
Not related to lactation. I am getting ready to drop a book that talks about Breaking Bad. So it's really about, the title is Breaking Bad. It's letting go of these generational expectations of what you should be doing, and really kind of latching on to the things that you want to do so that you can live life on purpose. So it's more about my transition from corporate America into my entrepreneurial passion.
I love that you used the word latching when you just gave that little description. Is that intentional?
It wasn't, but it worked out.
Well, congratulations on is it available for purchase?
It's not yet, but it will be very soon.
When that happens, just email me the link and we'll update the description box.
Definitely will.
Yeah, good luck with that too. Oh, since we're talking about your services, one thing we like to do, because me, Alicia, and Geraldine, we're all Black women who identify as straight or cisgender. So we want to make sure we're always thinking about people who aren't sitting at our table. And so we like to think about those vulnerable communities. For us, vulnerable communities include young children, which you're already taking care of their needs. Older adults, do you encounter them at all?
Typically as a support system with the family that's coming, but I also provide free lactation care to teens. So if you are 19 and below, there's no insurance, there's no card exchange because for a variety of reasons, but I want them to have adequate lactation care as well.
Veterans?
Yes, I see a lot of veterans. I take TRICARE.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
The LGBTQ plus community?
Yes. And so here's my philosophy. I don't care who you're sleeping with as long as it's not my husband. And so my role is to help the family and support that milk supply. I've had same-sex couples, and that's just where we operate.
I'm still on your husband. I mean, I'm not on your husband, but you know what I'm saying? The way you answered that, I really love that. And thank you so much for meeting the community's needs too, because that's actually there's a huge barrier when it comes to the LGBTQ plus community and being able to find people who are healthcare professionals and care providers that are welcoming. And so a lot of times they don't seek care, and they actually have their own poor health outcomes.
Right.
What about people who have sensory deficits?
Yes, and that's part of my intake form, so that I'm aware of that going into the assessment. When I was getting my clinical hours, we helped a mom who had she actually didn't want to feed baby at the breast. We weren't told that information, so we are latching baby. You know, we touched her breast, and she checked out. She was just there, and afterwards, the nurse who booked her was like, "Oh, I forgot to tell you guys. She just wanted to pump and bottle feed." So she may have had some sexual trauma related to her breast that we didn't know, and that we probably infringed upon because we didn't get that information up front. I never ever want to experience that again. And so it's very important to have these conversations about sensory, or, you know, if there's some triggers that a family has, so that I am not that person making that family member relive this trauma.
Oh, I'm so glad we even touched on that. Yeah, so there's a thing called medically induced PTSD, and like yourself, we're certainly not going in to do that, but it can certainly be the outcome if there's not enough information provided up front.
Right.
And so, did you change? How do you find out if people have like a traumatic experience like that?
So when they're in the office, like it's through talking, you know, I always ask permission to touch the breast. Like, is it okay if I touch? Because oftentimes people that look like us, they're not asked. I can remember being in college and getting a pap smear, and the doctor brought in students and was like, "Oh, is it okay if they're already here? Like they're already in the room. Like they've already seen what I have to offer." And I didn't feel comfortable saying no. And I never went back because I was like, "Oh my gosh," like I felt shamed. And I remember what that feels like. And I don't want to be the person that does that to other people. So always asking for permission to touch. If there's anything that you want to tell me, if you feel safe in your household, just being able to be a listening ear, but providing resources to whatever it is that my families need.
Ooh, really comprehensive care. That's what I hear.
As it should be.
Yeah, exactly. And then what about, do you have any clients on the autism spectrum?
I don't know for sure if I have encountered maybe some suspected, but that shouldn't really alter care unless there's something about touching. You know, being very, is it okay if I touch you? That type of thing. I will say that I have an amazingly awesome autistic nephew who I adore, and who has really taught me great things about patience and communication, which I hope bubbles into my profession as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for getting into that for me.
Yeah.
And then, what can we expect from you from the next 12 months? We kind of heard a little bit.
Yes, so definitely more courses and teaching, and hopefully creating more lactation professionals that are out there, that are have evidence-based knowledge, that are trained adequately, that are culturally competent, out there changing the world. And I hope that with my degree that I'm able to really influence policies and procedures that negatively impact birth and breastfeeding outcomes for Black and Brown women. So I want to change the world. I want to be a resource, all the things.
Well, you're certainly on your way. I love that you mentioned change the world, because as a doctoral student when I was, and now as a mentor for doctoral students, one thing we emphasize with them all the time is change the world after you graduate. Just graduate right now.
Don't boil the ocean.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we touched on so many important topics, and you did a great job on closing out on one of the most important, if you're trying to make change, is to be part of policy. And that's really the end of that sentence. If you want to make change and have it be lasting, you have to be sitting at that table.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, you've done such a wonderful service today on giving us a really great background on what it means to be an entrepreneur, what it means to find something you're truly passionate about, how to find those gaps when it comes to care, and how to fill those gaps. And you really did a great job on teaching us how to make people feel comfortable in a body that's theirs.
Yes, yeah, because it's the only one you're going to get. So got to do the best we can with it.
Yeah, well, your passion is palpable. We know people are going to reach out to you and seek your guidance. And so all that information will be in our description box. Like I said, you're welcome back anytime if you bring a new service, a new book, a new product, and certainly to share the results of your research when you're finished. And we thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kimberly. Thanks for having me.
Remember, everyone, you can email us your questions or show ideas to tmi.melanin@gmail.com. If you haven't already, we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on every social media platform. Say hello in the comments when you get there. Rate us on the Apple and Spotify podcasts. Leave a comment. It really helps you support the show, and it gets the message to those who really need to hear it. We air the whole show in its entirety on YouTube and LinkedIn, and then we're on lots of little videos on all your favorite social media platforms. At the time of this filming, we release new episodes on Sundays at noon Eastern on YouTube. And if you're a true subscriber, you might notice that the podcast actually drops at 5 a.m. I used to be a night nurse, and I know my colleagues are still out there at all hours of the day. And we just want to make sure that they have time, whether they're commuting to work or from work, to be able to tune in before they go to sleep. So we thank you, Tenise. We'll be keeping you in our prayers as you complete your doctoral research, as you continue to put yourself out there in the community to make a difference in people's lives, and your family who supports you, because what you're trying to do, you haven't done alone, and you won't be able to reach your goals doing it alone. So We'll keep you in our prayers and our thoughts. Our door is always welcome to you. We thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you next time.